Hi guys, welcome back to InHaus podcast. I'm here with a guest this morning. We've got Sean on with us. Sean's a developmental assistant at the Egyptian Theater here in DeKalb, and they're doing a capital campaign project for a couple renovations that they want to be doing. So Sean, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're doing a $5.5 million expansion project on the building. It's the first physical expansion of the building since it was built in 1929. It's really cool. So it's a two-story expansion. So what the big things coming out of this expansion is that we're getting air conditioning for the first time, so we'll be able to be year-round theater instead of just a partial year-round theater. We're getting an updated heating system so we don't freeze during the winter, which is really nice. And then we're adding tripling our bathroom size. So right now there's probably about 6 women's stalls, both that's including the first and second floor, and probably just a few more less than that in men's toilets and restrooms. So now we're about to triple that, so we're going to have 16 on the first floor for women's stalls, and just as many toilets and urinals for the men, and then about 68 stalls on the second floor for the women, and again just as many for the guys up there. Awesome. So we'll be able to not have these super long lines during the intermission, and people don't have to wait super long. We're also getting a whole new concession stand on the first floor, which will allow us to have a full bar, so a liquor license. We don't have to outsource that anymore. We'll get a whole new concession stand on the second floor, which we've never had.
Wow, that's awesome. And
then we'll just get a bunch more storage that us as a venue can have, because we just are just cramming everything in every little spot that we have right now. So having all this extra storage will make it a lot easier for us as a venue.
Cool, that's awesome. Because you guys host some pretty big names, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It'd be good to have that extra room, right?
Yeah, because at the end of this month, we're gonna have Chris Jansen, a big country music star. Right now, we're pushing about 900 tickets for that, but we'll definitely have probably 1,100 people.
That's nuts.
For that. My first event that I was a part of was a Tiny Meat Gang. I never knew who they were. We sold that out to 1,403 people. That's our seat capacity.
That's crazy.
That was nuts. But that's when I first saw we need everything we're getting, because we had these long moments.
For sure. So tell me about where people can go to help fund you guys, or how it would look if somebody wanted to support.
So you can go to lightscameradonate.org, and that's how you can just directly donate online to the theater, and there will be a specific building expansion campaign that you can select. You can also mail in a donation to 135 North 2nd Street, DeKalb, Illinois 60115.
Sweet.
Or drop by the theater and drop off a donation there. And honestly, it doesn't matter what size the donation, as we say, there's no donation that's too little or too big for us. We're about $4.1 million into our $5.5 million goal.
Sweet.
So we're getting close, but we still need to be able to make that final push to complete cover all the expenses.
Well, thanks, dude. I really appreciate it. This has been Sean with the Egyptian Theater in DeKalb. Thanks for coming on, Sean. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Titus.
Okay, you intro us, man.
Me?
Yeah.
What's going on, Caleb? We have Caleb Hoover, who's from... You introduce yourself.
Oh, okay. Caleb Hoover. I work with crew at NIU and some of the surrounding smaller local schools. So, yeah, I'd love to be here with you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Appreciate it, man. So, tell us about yourself. We make everybody you.
I'm 35. I've been married 12 years. I got 2 kids. My daughter is 7, Lily. She's a first grader. And my son is almost 5. He's in preschool right now. and we're pretty new to the DeKalb Sycamore area. We moved here in 2018 to work with Crew at NIU, and we came over from Purdue University. We've been there for about 10 years.
Okay.
So still getting used to the area, really are enjoying our time here.
Awesome.
And yeah, excited to hang out with you guys this morning. So.
Yeah. What's been the biggest difference from Purdue to DeKalb slash Sycamore?
I feel like there's a lot of different.
Yeah, do the town or the school?
Both.
Okay, the town. Actually, the towns are really similar in that
Really?
they're both kind of smaller.
Uh-huh.
They have like their sister town. In West Lafayette, it's West Lafayette.
Okay.
And here it's DeKalb and Sycamore. And you have a lot of your local restaurants and your local coffee shops and things. But you also have your a lot of chain stuff. And so. Maybe it's a little smaller here, but the towns are relatively similar. It's the schools.
Okay.
It's the schools that are really different. Purdue's got like 40,000 people, and there's so many people in the dorms that they're like overflowing into like apartment complexes that are now run by the school, and they're building new dorms.
Dude,
And
that's incredible.
here at NIU, you have like half the dorms that are closed. And,
Everything's declining.
Yeah. And then they're letting anyone.
Anybody
pretty
in,
much
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like we gotta build our.
And I love NIU. I mean,
Yeah.
we got this. The school's great. The students are great. It's just a different. I mean, half the people here are commuters, and so they're coming in and out. And you get transfer students who are in and out. And Purdue is like 4 years, 5 years. You come as a freshman, you graduate. You're there the whole time because it's farther away for so many people from home. Nobody's going home every weekend.
Right.
So it's just a different
Yeah, NIU is
atmosphere.
definitely a commuter school.
Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, being at Barcema, like business school
Mhm.
all day, it's like by 4, half of that college is gone.
Mhm.
Like going home or.
I feel like you don't get the full college experience at NIU.
Maybe for a lot of people who are also trying to work 20 and 30 hours a
Right.
week and who are going home and
That's
only
true.
coming for classes. Yeah, and so from a ministry standpoint, it's like much more difficult to like meet students, for students to have the free time on campus to hang out.
I
And
feel like
so-
there's also not a ton to do on campus
Yeah.
and around it.
Yeah, I think the new student center's helping.
Yeah,
But yeah.
This town is dry.
Yeah. Too much work. But what ways have you guys at Crew sought to work through that challenge of like having just tons of people commuting and
Yeah, that's
a lot
a
of presence.
That's a good question. I think that's something we're still figuring out as we think of like the enigma of NIU.
Yeah.
That was how it was pitched to me when they asked me to be the team leader.
Yeah.
I was like, Caleb, like this is a tough school. It's a really hard. It's a hard place to figure out. But I like puzzles. I
Yeah.
like the difficulty, and so they were kind of like, go, just try, innovate.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we have tried is just to be where the students are. So in my old job at Purdue, I spent every day, all day in the dorm that I was working in because that's where the students were that I was working with. And now at NIU, there's just not as many people who are coming in and out of the dorms. They're coming in and out of Barcema. They're coming in and out of the library. They're coming in and out of the student center.
Yeah.
And so that's where we set up shop. And so that's been a little bit different. I think even though the dorms aren't the key place, one of the things that we did when we first got here was put a Bible study in every dorm so that we could at least reach the people who are here. So I don't know, we're still figuring it out and having fun along the way. I think things are going well, but there's still a lot to figure out about what is the best approach to meeting and reaching students here.
Right. Yeah. Man, that's awesome. Do you have any questions to ask or?
No, man.
No? Okay.
Not off that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So why Crew?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I went to college. I played football and baseball in high school.
What positions did you you play?
I was an outfielder
Okay.
in baseball.
Did you play
and
right field?
I played all over
Okay.
the outfield. But thank you for that.
Right field's where they put
Thinking
you.
that I'm a right fielder. Maybe when you play like 6 and 7 years old, but when you are playing at the high school level, right fielders actually get the ball sometimes.
Well, we played in church softball league, and I was always putting.
That's different.
Right.
In church softball, everybody pulls the ball, so
Yeah.
unless it's a left-handed hitter, you're not getting much.
That's why they put me out there.
And then football, I played outside linebacker, which was yeah.
Ooh,
Not
killed
surprised.
it.
But yeah, in high school, I grew up. I went to church, but my faith didn't mean anything to me, really. And so I just went to college to party for the most part and get a degree. Hi, Mom. And went to a fraternity my first couple weeks there and enjoyed that. But after a couple weeks, started feeling like, man, this is kind of hollow. This isn't really fulfilling what I want out of my college, feeling like there's got to be more to college than this.
Right.
And so I did promise my parents that I would go to a Christian group. Found Crew a couple weeks in, and I think that was the first time that I saw people who were my age, who I thought were cool, care about their faith, take their faith seriously. They talked about a relationship with God that was just different than whatever I had experienced. And so that made me curious to kind of know what I was missing. And so over the course of a couple weeks, getting more involved with Crew, started to realize like how you could have a relationship with the Lord, what that could look like. And got really excited about that. Stopped going to the fraternity house so much. Not because there was anything wrong with those guys, but because I knew that I probably couldn't handle having, one foot in each of those two worlds.
Did you ever use that as like a ministry tool? Did you ever go back to that fraternity house?
Yeah, so my junior year, there was a guy who was a part of Crew who joined the same fraternity, and there were still some of the guys that I knew that were in the fraternity. And so I would hang out with them a little bit after a couple of years of figuring out, okay, this is how I want to live. And it was never as successful as I would have liked it to be. But yeah, I was young then and maybe didn't always have the same approaches to ministry. But yeah, after 4 years of being involved with Crew at Illinois State and seeing just how influential college students can be and how important it is to engage college students as they're figuring out what they think and believe and becoming independent adults. I just love that vision, thought that I was kind of made for working with college students. And so I've been on staff ever since.
That's awesome.
You haven't done anything else?
Well, okay, so for a year after we graduated, I taught at Lake Park High School. I was a building sub and coached freshman baseball.
Nice.
And then while we were raising support, I continued to be an occasional substitute teacher and continued coaching their baseball team.
During that time where you're like, I know that I'm working towards Crew, or like being on staff and this is just kind of like a place filler.
Yeah, it was like to keep me from going crazy, from being in my apartment and only making phone calls and sending emails to raise our initial
That's
support.
so crazy.
My mom taught at Lake Park High School, and so she helped me get the sub job, and all of her friends would request me as their sub, so I could sub 2 or 3 days a week. I could go help with the baseball team in the spring, and still
Kept you pretty busy then.
Yeah, still work towards support.
That's awesome. And what did you major in?
I was a history education major.
Okay.
That makes
Nice.
so much sense now. You and your history story.
Yeah,
They're so
gotta provide the fluff in your material to make analogies and whatnot.
What fascinates you about history? Why?
I think for me, one of the reasons I started studying history was like individual stories.
Mhm.
There's like the broad context of history that I think is fun and interesting to study, but like getting into like an individual life and the impact that an individual life can make is ultimately, I think, what drew me to want to know as many of those individual life stories as possible.
Was there like a specific area that you studied? Because history is
It's so
History,
fast.
yeah.
Yeah. Getting a history degree is like ridiculous.
How do you even narrow that down?
You don't.
Yeah.
You take like you choose like one class from like each of these like 7 or 8 different categories, and they call that a history degree. And then
Like, here you go.
on top of that, as a history education major, like I also was like.
teach.
Well, yeah, and then you're also like qualified once you take the test to be a social sciences teacher. So
Whoa.
that includes like economics and sociology and civics and government and all that stuff.
my
And I'm qualified to teach economics, and
Could you?
no, there was not a chance that if you gave me a classroom of people, of like sophomores in high school to teach economics, that I would be able to do that. And so the reality is you get a degree and then you read for the rest of your life so that you are one day ahead of
That's
your
the
students
worst.
that you teach. And I like reading, but
Sounds like a nightmare to me.
yes. Yeah. So
Yeah, I have a friend who's he's got like all his history stuff. He's like gonna be in like a master's program. He wants to get like his PhD, and all he does, he's like, I read like 8 books a week. He's like, I read 8 books a week and I do nothing else.
yeah, it is. It's crazy because you're taking all history classes, and all history classes assign the same homework. It's like 50, 60, 100 pages, a night or a week to read, and so you are reading nonstop if you're going to do all the reading.
Did you ever just like skim it?
Oh yeah, my strategy in college was like read 10 pages, and then when we get to that section in the class discussion, because that's pretty much all history classes were class discussion, you make sure you get your participation points on those 10 pages. And then
And that was it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And then the strategy for writing, sorry guys, the strategy for writing a paper is you
No,
pick-
are you listening to this?
yeah, you pick like 15 to 20 pages throughout the book to read. You find a quotable like section in each of those 15 or 20 pages. You create your thesis around those quotes. You make sure you put all those quotes into your writing. And man, I got solid A's and B's through college with that strategy.
You see, I don't have a whole lot of college experience, but when I did, my mom told me that same thing. Like, you just pick the main points, and then you write around those. Don't bother reading these 50 to 100 pages that they assign you.
Do all like the parents of crew students watch this? Because if so, I would not encourage your students to do that. They're paying for their education. I want them to excel and do well. I need that said. But for me, it was like at some point in college, I knew I didn't really want to be a history teacher anymore. I was too far down the road to change a major to something else. I knew that I wanted to work with crew, and so it was about just getting the degree.
So do you ever get frustrated now and you're like, man, I wasted?
Yeah, I was just about to ask that.
No, because I think I use a lot of the skills that I learned in teaching, classroom management, different learning styles
For sure.
that I approach to things like Bible study or giving a message or
Yeah.
even just one-on-one discipleship.
That's true. I feel like there's so many different like sections of like a history degree where it is like you have to learn how to teach and handle different students.
Right.
That is-
Well,
yeah.
and I think too, some of history is just learning how to learning how to read something, comprehend it, and to think about things like critically and logically.
Yeah.
And so I use that stuff all the time. So plus I enjoy history, so I'll still read history books. Now I don't have I don't have to read 50 pages a
Right.
day or.
But you will for fun.
I can read it more like on my own. But also I don't have 5 books that I have to read 50 pages from. I can just do one. So
Yeah, that is true. I know, like, with me being in 5 classes and things and having such a limited amount of time in the day, it's like you just have to get through everything, and so yeah, skimming becomes
Second nature.
Yeah, second nature almost.
I skim every book that I read.
that's a callback to the first episode
It is.
of this.
Oh, shoot, listen.
Let's get a little update. How are we doing on your reading for the new year?
Called out.
No, I'm sure by the time this episode is released, I will have read more. But
He's just like, goes upstairs.
After this episode, I know where I'm going. I'm going to read my book,
Yeah.
but I haven't been reading.
Fair enough.
Has there been any book that you've been kind of digging into recently, or?
I'm reading this book called Scandalous Stories. It's a scandalous title, but it's not a scandalous book. It's a commentary on some of the different parables that Jesus
Was that by Tim Keller?
is not.
Yeah.
It's by the guys who run the 40 Minutes in the New Testament
Oh yeah.
podcast.
Yes.
And it's not like anything that's like mind blowing. It's just like really good, clear. Like, what is Jesus talking about when he says these parables that kind of come out of left field? And so it's been fun to just be in stories that are familiar. Something that as you read the Gospels, you probably read right through because I've read them so many times. But to like sit in them and to think about what Jesus was actually teaching was really good.
That sounds really interesting.
It does.
It's a short book.
Oh, you're speaking my language.
Yeah, chapters are like 5, 6, 7 pages. But
Can I borrow it?
sure, yeah.
Yes. Let's go. That's a book I might actually read.
Yeah, sounds cool.
No, because I feel like I always read like the parables and I read like these things that the Lord does in the Gospels, and I'm like, that's really confusing. Like, I don't get it. Like, but then like I feel like this breaks it down a little bit more. So.
Yeah. How do you guys kind of combat like the familiar nature of
Scripture?
the Bible? Yeah, Scripture. Do you dive deeper into it, or what's your process?
Yeah. So I think I've shared this before, but I think one of the most important things for me when I'm studying the Bible is to like be active when I do it, and so.
What do you mean be active?
So a lot of times, like I'll have a bunch of colored pencils with me.
Oh yes.
And rather than having my Bible next to me, I'll like print out the chapter that I want to read, or I'll print out the whole book or letter that I want to read.
Smart.
And then I will have different colors that mean different things, and I'll kind of go through and actively mark up that thing that I printed out. And for me, that just gets my mind engaged more, so that I can not just fly by things that I've read before, but can sit in and think about, okay, what does this connection mean, or why these words, or what is this contrast trying to highlight, or whatever. So
Is there any specific questions that you ask yourself? Are there any like go-to questions when you're reading a chapter or reading a section of scripture that you're like? Because I know that the most common one I hear people ask is like, what does this tell us about God?
Mhm.
And so.
Yeah, so I think first, there's 2 questions that I try to focus on, especially if I just got 15 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. The first is like, where do I see my sin nature? Where do I see the fact that I'm broken, fallen, separated from God in this section? And I think every passage of Scripture has an either direct point to that or an allusion to the fact that we're just fallen people. And then the second question then is, how does Jesus redeem the fact that I'm fallen and broken in this passage?
That's sick.
That's awesome.
So it's like it's just a gospel focused way of thinking through things. So
I really like that.
Yeah. Wow. That's cool. How do you, kind of going back to like college ministry and that whole avenue, like how has the atmosphere, the environment of college changed from when you went to school to now? Has it been easier
It's been more
to
expensive.
minister? Yeah. Like, has it been easier to minister now or back then? Or
oh, that's a really good question.
Big hitters this morning.
Yeah. I think so. I'm old. When we went to I'm
You're
older.
like 28.
I'm 35.
Wow, you look 28.
When we went to college, we had cell phones, but we didn't have smartphones.
Yeah.
Smartphones really became a thing, 2006, 7?
yeah, something like
And
that.
that's like, maybe the first smartphones were starting to hit campus when I was graduating.
Okay.
And so,
That's insane.
yeah, we didn't have social media. Facebook came out in 04 during my freshman year.
Was it a more social culture, as far as like us sitting down and talking?
Well, yeah, because not everybody like had their phones out while we sat down and ate together, and I mean we did text, but mostly if you wanted to hang out with somebody, you either called them or you like sent them a message on their AIM.
Do you guys remember the days of
AOL Instant Messenger?
Do you remember the days of going to your friend's house and like
knocking on the door?
And
Oh,
like,
yeah.
hey, is so
Yeah, shout out to Greg and Nathan because they were the two guys in my court.
I remember running over to my friend's house, hey, and she'd be like, no, and I'm like,
Oh, okay. You just kind of
Then you just walk back home.
yeah. That's the walk of shame. That's the bottom.
That's
the walk of shame.
for like the 10-year-old.
Yeah.
I have no friends.
Jimmy couldn't come out and play today.
Huh.
So I think with smartphones, there's like all the research that talks about how smartphones, social media, and the link to like anxiety and stuff. So I think the biggest difference from when I went to college versus now is the heightened anxiety, depression, mental stress that students are under.
Yeah.
I think college has gotten more difficult and more competitive. I think after 2008, with like the economy dip, people started. As you guys were kids when your parents went through that. Whether your parents lost jobs or not, most people felt that, and so there's a study that was done. This is going way beyond what you asked, but there was a study that was done, and from the 1960s, the top answer of like why a college student would pick their major was that they enjoyed it, they were passionate about it, they were excited to study it. From like 2010 on, that started to shift to security being the number one reason why you pick something. So now you have all these college students who are, anxious, stressed, depressed, who are not picking, their majors based on what they want to study, but what they think will offer them the most security.
Yeah, right.
And that I think has affected the college campus,
Dog
and
eat
the
dog.
student. Yeah.
I once had a guy who I was driving for my job. Like I picked him up, and he basically told me that my ministry degree was crap. Not because he didn't like Christianity or anything. He's like, you're not going to get a job in that field.
Right.
Like it's not going to do you anything. Like he's like, go get an engineering degree. I basically looked at him. I was like, I'm just trying to drive you to back to the branch.
Yeah.
But like that's the thing is like so many people. You're right. Like they don't do what they want to do. They do what they have to do to make money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So dumb.
And they're trying to, I mean, there are so many people who are trying to get engineering degrees who don't like math, who are struggling in their classes, but who just feel like if I put my head down and finish this degree, then I'll get a high-paying job, I'll live comfortably, I'll have the job security that I need. And I don't know, we'll see in 10 years and 20 years whether those people are still engineers or whether they've decided, man, I picked a degree that I do not want to do.
Do you think college will ever become, and I see more and more places like this who are like not looking for people with like degrees as much. Do you think that college will ever become obsolete? Like that idea that you have to get like a degree on a piece of paper to do a job you love? Like I heard, was it Elon Musk, who basically was talking about Tesla, and he was like, and this was recently, he goes, I don't care if you haven't even graduated high school. Like I'm just looking for like, he was
hard
looking,
work.
yeah, the hard work and the ability to do it. Like of course you had to pass like some tests to show that you could actually do the work, but like they hadn't even graduated high school yet.
Wow.
I don't think it'll become obsolete. I do think that maybe it'll be less necessary.
For sure.
I think innovation is like the wave of the future. So if you
Innovation,
can be
excellence.
if you can be innovative without a degree, and you know how to, you can obviously, like you said, pass skills tests and know how to do the jobs that you're applying for. Then
Like NIU just took out the whole ACT, SAT deal, and of course that's because they want to get more students. But I feel like less people are looking at that, and more people are looking at like your grades.
Yeah, like your grades and your just work ethic too.
Yeah.
It's like that's
Can you complete something?
yeah, can you like do something with excellence and not just do it, you know?
Yeah, I mean, if Elon Musk can hire someone to work at Tesla for nothing, it's like, that's such a big company, like you should be able to do anything really. I
Right.
feel like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it would be interesting to see, especially like as you know, both of us get older and eventually graduate and stuff, and kind of see that from the other side. But how has that affected ministry? Just the change of like social dynamics with social media and things with students.
So, I mean, you used to be able to either call or text a student, and almost everybody would get back to you. Even if they decided that they didn't want to talk to you, like you didn't want to have a follow-up conversation, there was usually the like, no thanks, I'm good, or the like, yes, let's meet up at such and such a time. It's amazing how like low the percentages of people who actually respond to a text. Even people who, when they like fill out a contact card, are like, yes, I want to talk to somebody, more about, my faith, or yes, I'd like more information about crew. You're like, oh, okay, this person's interested. And then you text them like 2, 3, 4 times, and it's just like,
They just don't
nothing.
answer you.
Yeah. So we're gonna try next year, instead of phone numbers, we're gonna get Instagram handles or Snapchats and start snapping people instead of texting.
That would be kind of cool.
Because then you get to see when they open it, and you're like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, so
Then it hurts more.
it feels like, man, people are they're so much more free with their social media handles, and they want followers, and they want likes and things, and so we'll use that, I think, in a different way in the future, and see if that helps at least get more initial contact with people, more responses.
I wonder if, like, I have like the thought, like, social media killed the culture, but I feel like in many ways it enhanced it. Everybody's out here like bashing social media, but like you're saying, like we can now get like Snapchat handles and Instagram handles, and like that's gonna help. I feel like.
Maybe, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know yet. I hope so.
Yeah,
I hope
true.
so, but I
That's
don't
true.
know.
Huh. So I had a conversation with you, I don't know, maybe it was a month ago or something, and you were saying that you were preaching at a church off of the book of Colossians. And for our listeners' sake, for context, Caleb led a group, like a Bible study group, last semester on the book of Colossians, and
Still like
Yeah, we're
You still
going.
are?
We're going real slow.
Awesome.
real slow.
Wow.
But good, hopefully.
Yeah, no, I love it. I think
Yeah.
it's phenomenal.
I mean, last semester I enjoyed
I'm not just saying that because you're here.
Yeah. I mean, it was
Even if
really
you-
I came home and filmed about it, so you gotta know
You did,
doing
yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah. But how was that? Like going from, maybe smaller Bible study fashion to preaching about it?
Yeah, I feel like in a Bible study you can ask a ton of questions and kind of run the whole gamut of what is this text talking about. Plus we are in like our 10th or 11th week at least of studying it, and so we've 5, 6, 7 passages or verses at a time. I only got 6 weeks to preach through the whole book, and so I was taking larger chunks. So I think the biggest difficulty was like, what's the main thing that I really want to focus on? And we can dabble in some of these other areas as offshoots, but I think for a message to be successful, each message needs to have like one overarching theme, and then to teach that point as you're going through the text. And so that was the hardest thing, is like figuring out because I really love that book, and there's so much in it. Figuring out what do I want to teach this week as we look at Colossians 1-15 or whatever.
Ooh, follow-up question.
Go for it.
So you've gone from Bible study context to large church context. How does that differ? Like, how does the large church and the Bible study differ from when you're speaking at Crew on a Thursday night? Because you do have like 15 to 20 minutes, which is not as long as a message generally, or it's longer than a Bible study. So it's like that middle ground, I feel like.
Yeah. So
This is also going to help me out.
yeah, they say that a college student has like 8-second attention span.
Oh,
Yeah.
man.
So
That's
when
what
you-
I'm working against.
Yeah, so when you speak at something like a real life, something at crew, I think you need to it's almost like bullet points. You want to tell a quick story and then make a point, and then tell another story and make a point, and try to keep them engaged for as long as possible. And it's the reason why we try to do 12, 15, maybe 18-minute messages, as opposed to when I spoke at the church, it was like 35 minutes. Because you just don't have that same attention span.
Yeah.
I think the audience too at Real Life is different. We have, I think, a fair amount of non-believers who come each week, and so not that you don't want to make the gospel clear at a church, because I try to do that, but making it really clear at a Real Life what the gospel is, what somebody needs to do to come into a relationship with Christ, and trying to do that in a way that's just maybe more engaging, more interactive.
Yeah. That's my challenge this week.
Yeah, because you're giving a
talking
crew.
Did you land on what you're going to talk about?
I'm going to talk about the overarching theme of trusting in God.
Okay.
But I don't know. Today was going to be my day to really work on it. I don't know. I'm bouncing back and forth between Matthew 14, the story of Peter walking on water, and Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. But I'm not totally sure. I was going to work on it later. So,
Nice.
we'll see.
Excited to hear.
But I do want to keep the audience and the students engaged. So I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. Huh. So, coming from college into, adult life, and being an adult life, being married, having kids, what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced in college, and kind of being on this other side and looking back in hindsight? What were some of those?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
This guy out here, you sure you haven't done this before?
So, my parents are incredible. They're
Shout out Mr. and Mrs. Hoover.
Yeah, they're generous. They're just kind. They'll give you the shirt off your back kind of people, and so that was awesome. But I think one of the ways that was not awesome is that it didn't force me into adulthood in any real ways. I didn't have to have a job really. My parents wanted us to play sports. They wanted us to be involved in student council and all kinds of different things, and they would just give us money to pay for gas.
What?
And other things. It was our job was to be a student. Our job was to be a football player and to have fun and enjoy that. And it was kind of true in college as well. I did have a small part-time job, but if I needed anything, if I needed clothes or money for books or whatever, my parents were really generous to help out. And so I think one of my biggest hurdles in college was just entering adulthood, and that probably comes across as really privileged, and it is. It's been something that I think I still struggle with.
Yeah.
There's
a time and a place for that though.
Yeah, and so I think one of my greatest junior year, senior year, even my first year of marriage was okay, you're an adult now. You pay for your utilities, you pay for your rent, you work hard, you get a job, and I think that not really ever having to work hard at a job, and then I was a pretty good student, but I didn't feel like I worked terribly hard as either a high school student or a college student. Was oh, real life is hard, and you have to work hard to be successful. And so developing work ethic, developing as an adult was something that I feel like I needed to grow in a lot. And I think I'm still growing in that area, but I think I've come a long way in terms of what it means to be an adult. And
is that something you're gonna pass on to your kids, right? You said that you grew up in your words, kind of privileged and stuff like that, or kind of your parents did a lot. Are you gonna, I don't know, challenge your kids to go out and get a job and work hard? And does that make sense?
yeah, well, working in ministry, I don't have quite the same financial
For sure.
means as my parents do.
Oh yeah, no, yeah.
And so, yeah, I think instead of just being given a car like I was,
Right.
I think I'll probably do something where like I'll tell my kids, you know, I'll match whatever you save or something like that, and then we'll buy a car together, and then you'll be responsible for half the insurance or half the gas. We'll see what life
That's
looks
a lot
like
of years
10 years
down
from
the
now.
road.
But yes, I think that, yeah, again, my parents did so many things right, but I think teaching a little bit more responsibility and like work ethic and like stuff costs money, so you should really care about you know, your time and what you're spending your money on, because you had to earn that money in some way. I think are things that I will want to pass on to my kids differently than my parents.
For sure. My parents were really big on like, especially now that they live in Alabama and I'm here, they're like, you do this is you now. Like you're gonna be 21, like you gotta handle all this stuff.
Yeah. And that was almost like a forced situation, because it's like,
Now you're
you
done.
didn't just move out.
Right.
They're gone.
They're gone and I didn't want to leave
Right.
everything here behind.
Yeah.
But yeah, living on my own now.
How's that now?
It's been good.
Kind of on your own with Noah.
Well, yeah, but I don't have like a parent hovering over me. Not that they hovered, they never hovered, but like, you know, it's like it's up to me now to make sure that my bills are paid and like the house is taken care of. There's nobody telling me to clean my room. Well, sometimes. Always, but
Noah threw you upstairs so that you can have a messy room and not affect the rest of the house.
exactly. Now I know why. We argued over the small room down here, but
Yeah.
It's probably better that.
I like the one upstairs more. More privacy.
That's true. What has been like, what or who has been the most influential aspect of your life? Like, is there a specific person who's really, I don't know, influenced you in a positive way, either spiritually, mentally, physically?
Yeah, there's a few people. I'll start with my dad. I don't know if you guys know this. My dad has bipolar disorder and just had a really rough childhood and has overcome a lot to be as successful as he is. And I talk about how I didn't actually have to have a job and you know, was given a lot, but what I learned about work ethic and responsibility as a kid definitely came from him and his willingness to get the help that he needed in order to be successful. And he's just incredible. He works really, really hard to provide for our family, and
That's awesome.
he's also a strong man of faith, serves at the church, and we just really appreciate him and the example that he has set as a dad and now a grandpa and all that stuff. So he'd be the first one. And then there are a couple guys who are older than me in college, Sean and Carl and Brad, who were those guys who, you know, they were emceeing the weekly meeting. Brad gave the message the first night that I ever went to a crew meeting, and they were just guys I just looked up to, thought they were cool, and you know, wanted to be like. So
That's awesome.
there's probably tons of others. I think about guys in ministry now. Carl, my old boss, Ryan Spiker, who's a couple years older than me, who was on the Purdue team. Just the way that they have had longevity in ministry and, you know, love the Lord, love their wives. They're not going to be, they're not Tim Keller and John Piper or whatever, but they are just living lives of faith and influencing, you know, generations of students. And so I appreciate the mentality of you don't have to be a famous missionary to have this eternal impact. You can just live your life faithfully, sharing the gospel with college students, and let the rest take place. place.
Right. What is your view on mentorship and discipleship? Like, do you think it's important? Do you think it's not important? Do you think it's not important?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Jesus modeled the need for mentorship and one-on-one time really well. You know, he had hundreds of people who followed him, but he chose 12 people specifically to really invest in, and 3 people from those 12 to like really invest in. And yeah, I just don't think, you know, in the absence of passing on the faith through like a one-on-one mentor-mentee relationship, I think you limit your potential for growth and impact without that. And so, yeah, I love discipleship. I love getting to think through, you know, helping somebody not just walk with the Lord through college, but, you know, how are you going to walk with the Lord 50 years from now? And how are you going to make an impact for the Lord wherever you end up going? So I love that. I love getting to challenge college students to think about, you know, and having an eternal perspective, starting in your 20s, so that you can have an eternal perspective in your 80s when eternity feels much closer.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome.
How's that impacted you? Like discipling people and kind of being in those more one-on-one interactions?
yeah, that's a good question. So I think it's kept me in ministry. I think that you know, there's like average staff. There's like a 5 to 7 year. You know, average.
But at least for the long haul.
Yeah, I think that there's, once you get past a certain amount of time, and I think Jenny and I are there, it kind of starts to feel like maybe I'm a lifer. Maybe I just want to do this for my life. And I love getting to interact with college students. I love the intersection of life that your college years represent. And yeah, so I think I keep an eternal perspective as I get to work with college students, even as college ministry gets more difficult, and even in the enigma of trying to figure out NIU, I think that like eternal perspective is what keeps me going. And I have some students who've graduated, have been graduated for a long time, and they're working, you know, they're working at Facebook, they're working at NASA, they're working in, you know, Shell, and some of these like Google, some of these like large corporations, and they're trying to start Bible studies, and they're, you know, influential in their communities. And I think it's so cool to get to see sort of the continued impact of like spiritual multiplication. So
That's incredible.
Yeah,
It
I love
is.
it.
That, like, yeah. I don't know. It's just really sweet.
Yeah, that is. Well, we're at 43 minutes now, so do you have any more questions, or?
Do you have any closing thoughts for it?
Oh,
Do you have any big
just
ones?
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
Kind of might close this out, but we'll see how it flows. But if there's like one thing that you could tell, you know, people who are in college right now, whether believers or unbelievers, like almost like a piece of advice, what would it be?
For believers, the answer is really simple. I think my favorite verse, sort of like a life verse for me, is Matthew 6:33. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all other things will be added on to you. And I think in the age of distractions and stress and just so much going on in the moment to moment and the temporary, that advice of just like put first things first, seek first His kingdom, have that eternal mindset. So when I left Purdue, my last meeting I was asked a very similar question, and that's what I told them. Just, man, wherever you go, whatever you do, like put God's kingdom first, make His things the first things, and not that life is perfect after that, but life falls into place in a different way. There's a different perspective which we look at things. To non-Christian students, I would just tell them that this time, my advice for them would be, in the next 4 years, explore your faith, explore who God is or might be, even if you're unsure if He even exists. This is the time in your life where you are the most open, have the the most flexibility to kind of figure out what it is that you like really believe. And so I would challenge them to like use that as an opportunity for gaining information, for exploring all those different areas. And if you come to the conclusion at the end of a legitimate like exploration that Christianity isn't for you, at least you'll have given it a fair shot.
Yeah.
There's the verse like, seek and you shall find, and I would just encourage anybody who doesn't know what they believe or isn't sure about things to be a seeker, to be open to God, to be open to what Jesus might be trying to teach them or show them.
That's sweet.
Well, that's awesome, man. Cool. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on. I really
Thank you guys.
appreciate it.
I loved having conversation, getting to talk and reflect about life and where.
This won't be the only time you're on here.
No
I'll tell you that right
And
now.
yeah, bring me back whenever. I love it.
For sure. So if people want to find you or your ministry, where can they find you?
Sure. I'm on Twitter at
sweet.
Hoover Caleb, but man, I pretty much only follow like fantasy sports writers.
This is a
And
big sports guy. I'm kind of
Big
sad
sports
we didn't-
guy.
yeah, next time we can talk about
Yeah,
sports.
next time we can talk about
I follow like Christian writers and fantasy sports analysts. I very rarely tweet, so you can find me, but I don't know if it will help. And then, like I said, I'm old. I don't have an Instagram or Snapchat yet, but we're gonna use them in the future. So
You can follow Crew at
you can follow Crew, and I don't even.
is it Crew at
Crew at NIU, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
on Facebook, Twitter. We don't have a Twitter. That's like the running joke.
Yeah. We don't have. We should.
We should.
Yeah. NIU Crew on Facebook and.
Everybody just tell this guy the Cubs stuff.
Oh wow! Is that how we're gonna end?
That's how we're gonna end. Alright, we'll see you guys next time.
All right, thanks,
Bye.
guys.
Thanks again.
Yikes.
And throw that jab in.